let's pull. Woo-hoo-hoo! What's going on, YouTube? Today I'm checking out this Scout Bobber, but I'm super excited. Last year I was testing out the Scout Bobber, and now we have this brand new 2025 Scout Bobber. This one's decked out with the ride command, so I'm testing out like the sport mode on this. So we will see what the differences are between this and the Scout Bobber of 2024, or the previous gen Scout Bobber. But initial impressions, as soon as I sat down on the seat is nicely improved for this year's model. Really nice and comfortable, very plush, and has a little lip in the back. The previous gen model, the seats were probably one of the worst things about the Scout Bobber. Not very comfortable, no lip in the back, so you were always kind of scooting back a little bit. So I'm glad that that's been taken care of for this year's model. That's already a nice improvement. What I love about the Scouts this time around is that it's a modular system. So this Scout, you can get it as this Scout Bobber, you can get it as a base model without any of this fancy tech stuff. I don't know what just happened there. My engine just cut off. So as I was saying, yeah, you can get it as a base model without the fancy tech stuff. It'll drop the price. I think it starts at around like 13K or so, but you can add these things on. So I like the fact that you can, you know, kind of get what you want with your Scout. So if you like having sport modes, if you like having navigation on such a small little bike like this, that is super nice. All right, so let's start off with the ergonomics. If you're familiar with the Scout Bobber, the ergonomics for this generation is pretty much the same. It's a low slung bobber, very low to the ground, low center of gravity. So it's very easy to manage. It feels very light on his feet. I can get my feet firmly planted on the ground, but you are going to be hunched over. I'm coming in at 5'8", and I am hunched over almost like a, you know, it's like a sport bike position, but then you have these forward, so you're in kind of this awkward taco position. So if you don't like that positioning, you can definitely get a bobber variant with taller handlebars. But for the Scout Bobber, you know, it really looks nice because it's low slung, it has nice clean lines. Looks wise, this is probably my favorite kind of like style. But if you like this aesthetic, you know, it's a small price to pay to get the style and this look. So we talked a little bit about ergonomics, we talked a little bit about the aesthetics of the Scout Bobber. Really like it. Let's talk about the power. This Scout Bobber has the sport mode, and it feels really nice and smooth. I gotta say, even on the sport mode, the throttle response is great. It doesn't feel jerky or twitchy at all whatsoever. It feels very predictable. I would almost say it's still very friendly. Like when I pull, there's a little slight delay until it kind of kicks in. The specs on the engine of this bike, if you don't know by now, it's a 1250cc motor, and it puts out about 105 horsepower and 82 foot-pounds of torque. So it's a pretty decent improvement from the previous year's model. This just reminds me of why I love the Scout Bobber so much. It's just so smooth, it's fun, it's fast, it's quick, it's nimble. If you want a cruiser that looks good, it's fun to ride, can't go wrong with the Scout Bobber. I absolutely love what Indian is doing with the Scout. I love the fact that they came out with, you know, the 5 variants of the Scouts, including the Scout 101, including the Scout Bobber, the Super Scout, the Sport Scout. Like any kind of Scout that you would want, any kind of changes that you would want, Indian's got you covered with the Scouts. I love that they're making that investment into their quote-unquote entry-level model. Here, this is the part where it kind of gets fun. Ooh, yeah. Nice power delivery, lots of torque. The sport mode also, I think, is a really fantastic addition to the Scout. If you want just a little bit more sporty feel, like quick acceleration, you got it with the sport mode. And the Scouts can definitely handle the twisties. So one thing that I'm noticing as I'm going through this demo ride is that there's a pretty good amount of heat coming from this engine. And with my Scout, I don't think it emits as much heat, but I just noticed as I was sitting there in traffic, I was feeling a lot of heat coming from from the engine up to my arms, which is kind of an odd sensation. Oh yeah, these twisties feel great. And I will also say the engine, maybe it's a 1250 motor, but it does have a little bit more vibration, I think, than the previous gen model, if I remember correctly. I like that there's a little bit more feedback. I like a more visceral kind of feel on a motorcycle. So that's pretty cool. Downshifts feel good. Suspension, I'd say the suspension feels about the same as the 24 Scout Bobber or the previous gen Scout Bobber. You know, nothing too improved. I don't think the suspension's been improved necessarily. I do know that they switched over to the steel frame. I don't know if that's going to make a difference. But overall, this reminds me exactly of the previous gen Scout Bobber with a few enhancements. Definitely a little bit more torque up front. The seat has been very much improved. Very, very much improved. I remember when I was testing out the 24 Scout Bobber and I was like, as immediately as I sat down on it, I was like, I know this, I'm not gonna get along with the seat. But this seat feels really good, actually. The one thing that I also really like as I'm going through this demo is just the positive clicks in the gearbox. Feels really nice and articulate, very precise. You're not gonna be stomping around on the gears trying to find neutral. It comes in very nicely. Oh yeah. This feels awesome, guys. To me, the Scout Bobber was already kind of perfect. You know, in terms of like the ride quality, they've improved it for sure. With the 1250cc motor, you get a little bit more, you get a little bit more power. And I love the fact that you can add the package of the ride command, the sport mode, and all that stuff. I would be totally fine having this as my only bike because I have navigation. I can take this, you know, on longer trips. If I need to, I can add some saddlebags. It's not going to be able to do long distance like a bagger, of course, but I like the fact that it makes it much easier now. And I'll have to say, it's probably a little bit more fun, I'm not going to lie, going around the twisties on this kind of a small little package motorcycle than on a bagger. So yeah, coming from a Scout Bobber owner, I would say the engine feel is definitely more refined. Definitely feels more refined, a little more power. I would almost venture out to say feels like the power delivery is just a little bit smoother. Maybe it's just because I have the sport mode on right now. But yeah, it just feels a little bit more refined. Some of you may like that, some of you may not. Overall, I think if you are a fan of the Scout Bobber, I would definitely give this a hard look. You may like it, you may not. I think there's a lot to like, including the seat, including the modularity. The ride quality feels a little bit better to me. I mean, I'm not saying by much, but I'm saying there's enough of an improvement all around the Scout Bobber that I think it's worth noting. So you guys already know that I'm biased. I own a Scout Bobber 20. I fell in love with the Scout Bobber as soon as I tried it out. I wanted taller bars, so I went with the Scout Bobber 20. So I'm biased, but even with that said, I think most people will agree that the Scout Bobber is just an awesome, awesome bike. All right, let's pull. Woo-hoo-hoo! Man, this guy in front of me, should have just passed him. Wow, yeah. Guys, sport mode with the Scout Bobber, that's the truth. That's real good fun. I would almost say the sport mode on the Scout Bobber actually, yeah, it takes it up a notch. If I were to get the Scout Bobber, I would definitely go for, what is it, the limited package. Like I mentioned, I'm biased towards the Scout Bobber, but there are some things that I don't like about the new Scout Bobber, like this tank design. I don't like this, you know, center console here, and I don't like the offset fuel cap. You know, it's a lot of little minor critiques. The 2-into-1 exhaust pipe, you know, I'm a fan of 2-into-1 exhaust pipe, but the one that's on the Scout Bobber just looks ridiculous. I mean, it's insanely large. That's what she said. I'm also not a fan of the engine design. I haven't mentioned that before. But those are like little minor nitpicks. And I guess the point of this video is that if those are, you know, really the only things that you can gripe about, you're doing pretty good. You're gonna change out the exhaust anyways. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but this seat, what a difference that seat makes in just the overall enjoyment of the ride. Because the previous gen, man, that seat was just such garbage. But Indian did a pretty good job on this. It's almost like they were listening to us. The Scout Bobber, I was already in love with it. I think they've made some really nice improvements. If you're a fan of the Scout Bobber, or if you have an older Scout or Scout Bobber, and you've been thinking about upgrade, I would say, dude, go for it. This is a ton of fun. All the things that I loved about the Scout Bobber, I feel like they just improved it by about, 10% or so. Guys, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you all found this video review helpful. But guys, I'm about to bounce out of here. I think this is close to the end of the demo ride, but thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in and coming along on the ride with me to test out the Scout Bobber. But I'm going to bounce out of here. Until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.